my second year here as a resident. I feel really grateful to be here and work in this space every day. I'm originally from Colorado and went to grad school in Ohio at LU with Gina, a past resident here. And this is my first step post-grad school. It's in Belger. So we moved here for this place and we're thankful we did. And I guess from my work perspective, I make like cartoons, basically, objects and people, things from memory, things from past moments in my life, and you know they're all sort of like this. They're kind of droopy or elongated or emaciated or something. A lot of people think they're funny, and I think they are sometimes. I think they're also pretty sad most of the time too. But they're things from life and processing past moments. So the resident show last term out here in the gallery had 3 tables of mainly smaller kind of objects, and was loosely based around like a cafeteria, public school room sort of thing. So this chance for children to come together and talk, you know, kind of amongst themselves, free from the institutional kind of, you know, restrictions that they're usually dealt with every day, and they can talk about their day and their ideas and tell each other stories and lies and things like that. And all the while trying to figure out what it's all about. So that was the previous work, and for this year, I'm focusing less on objects and more on human figures and trying to kind of, you know, mine, I don't know, personal stories, or trying to make things that are relatable, but also, narrative, and, you know, and the figures, I think, are, I don't know, through talking with people here, and now I'm out of sort of the grad school bubble, it seems like there's the most room to connect with other people through figurative work, for myself at least. And that's something that I want to continue to do. So I'm working on it.
We've got Joel, also second year resident.
Well, for those of you I have not met, my name is Joel Pisowicz. I'm not used to speaking at the microphone, so excuse me. So you'll see on the screen just like 3 examples of work that I sent into Lilly, and you can see that my work leans well into the realm of abstract, while still holding like some common familiar threads visually. And I think that this work right now, these forms are echoing artifact and monument simultaneously, to kind of, and hold a surface texture and patina that are kind of well-worn and referential to the landscape, like post-industrial area that I'm from, which is northern Indiana. Forgot to introduce myself, tell you where I'm from. But yeah, so these elements of like artifact and monument and surface texture and patina are all just kind of working together to express some central themes in my work. Themes like memorial, commemoration, and homage. But yeah, creating sculpture is just kind of the way that I choose to document and preserve my experience and my existence. And these kind of strive to hold stoic, austere qualities and, like I said, capture that essence that celebrates like the post-industrial landscape I grew up around. And when I'm creating these sculptures, I'm really just kind of like drawing from my experience in my past. And each one is either a story of its own that I'm thinking of, or kind of a general lived experience. But not trying to be too specific and really telling you that exact story, to kind of relate a nostalgia that the viewer can kind of adapt to their own story and their own experience. But yeah, all in all, really just like creating sculptures a way for me to subtly honor and cope and make memorial and to commemorate my past. celebrate the environment I grew up in, good, bad, or otherwise. Thank you.
How tall are these?
Those are all about like 14 to 16 inches.
Okay,
So they're up.
John, how much you make?
Yeah, so I will work at anywhere from like 8 inches tall to 16, 24 inches tall to 6 feet tall. But doing that to kind of, as a kind of investigation, if I can still hold a monumental scale in a smaller size. So that's something in my work that I try to explore because size and scale are not the same thing all the time. Thank you.
So we've got Hannah, who's a first-year resident.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Schelb. I graduated from Augusta University in Augusta, Georgia, where I grew up in Atlanta. And I moved out to Albuquerque working at Coyote Clay and Color School. I then kind of hopped over to Cincinnati where I taught K-12 after school programming. Got into grad school at UW-Madison and graduated in 2021. And I'm actually just coming back from teaching for 2 years at that institution as a lecturer. I'm really thankful to be here at Belger. I am really excited to have an opportunity where I am really dedicating much of my time to creating this work that I the concepts kind of started in the last 2 years while I was at UW-Madison. And what I've been kind of working towards are these modular pieces. I'm thinking about not only kind of like the engineering behind it, but to like ship or glaze something more easily, but I'm thinking about how those moments can change and change the story. Like how can I switch things up in ceramics? How can I make the narrative more movable? So I'm thinking about all these kind of concepts and pushing them in the way that I can. So I love like a little engineering. In this image over here, the faces are switchable. So there's actually a third snake on the back. When I'm kind of like, I'm somebody who loves stories. I'm not necessarily looking at stories to know truth. I feel like that leads you down like a path that you'll never really know. But instead, I'm looking at who has the authorship. I'm thinking about why is this story being told? In what way is this being told? I'm really investigating that. And so right now, I'm kind of engineering and experimenting with different ways of being able to move clay around and hopefully push it to a point where it really does influence how the piece looks from moment to moment. So that's kind of what I've been doing here, and also like kind of finding some humor in things and having fun with it. So yeah.
Tell me about the switchable face.
So that top face, there's like one with teeth and one that has a softer face. They're kind of shaped like a cone, and from that cone, like the way I fit it is I can take that face out. Like it's like a little.
After it's completed, you can take the face out and put another face in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a third snake on the back that it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
Also, the ear comes off. The ear is not on there, so if I don't want the ear on there, I can take that off. And so I was kind of thinking about how that changes the story when you, even the one previous where it's a cat. Like, what if the cat wasn't there and it was just this nose? Also, the kind of boogers coming out of it, like those are removable, so it could be not sneezing or something.
The boogers are removable.
Yes, yes. So they're just a simple kind of like nose ring, a stuffed nose ring kind of style thing, and so it's like really funny, but also you get to change things. And who is changing that? Is it the artist changing that? Is it the viewer? Like what's happening there? And I'm really interested in that piece. So, yeah, I'm exploring that some more.
Okay, next up is Allyson, first-year resident.
Hi, I'm Allyson George. So I'm from Florida. It makes a lot of sense when I say I grew up near Disney, and my uncles and my mom worked for Disney. This work kind of came about while I was an undergrad at West Virginia. We had a pop-up project for a multimedia class, and I was an athlete and everybody else I knew was going to take their pictures at like the student union and stuff. So I was like, you want to know something? I'm going to take it at all the facilities nobody else has access to. So I made a series of 30 mugs doing the different sports, and from there I just kind of kept doing them. My work and like the positions and the characters themselves, I think, really come about from like talking to other clay artists about clay, struggles with clay just being this thing that we love, and we also love to hate it a little bit. One of my favorite things recently, Hannah was the inspiration for it. There's a poster that I have about a raccoon firing, and Hannah was really into raccoon. At one point, she's like, you know what, it's the most traumatizing thing you can do to a pot. And I was like, so a pot can go to therapy over being in a raccoon fire. And then one of my other favorite artists, Tara Wilson, I got to see a talk of hers. She said, you need to make cute mugs in order to make sexy pots. And I was like, you want to know what really cute is a mug trying to be the sexy pot. So that's the positions that kind of came about, like the ones that I had for the holiday sale. And I just think it's more fun that way. I really like the idea of, my professors always told me to live with my work, so you can see, like, as a functional potter, like how your work fits into somebody's life. And I think I took that a little bit more literally, as having them live with you a little bit more, too. I also do a little bit of, like, 2D, so I have the poster here. I work at the shelter here, and I was like, what's a cat's relationship to a mug? Knocking it off the shelf that it sits on. I also have done 2D animation, so I have some functional work where the QR code actually on the bottom leads to an animation of what's happening on the mug. So like this one, for example, is frolicking through a flower field, because I got to live on Nantucket for one summer doing pottery, and there's all these flowers, and there's this field right outside of the studio, and it's like, you want to be, I bet that at night, they just, or like during the day when I'm not here, they just escape out there and run through the flowers. Just like this idealistic life for them to have. I also had one that was like stargazing, because there was actually stars at night there, so I had them stargazing at night when they left the studio. I have an animation of one falling off the wheel, because we all know when we start trimming, one of them falls off the wheel, breaks, we hate it, we're like, what's going on? So I have these little personalities to all of them. And each of them have their names, but I like to imagine too that when they go home with somebody, they're adopted and renamed. So they become their own little characters to be outside of just being a functional thing that we both use too.
Pass it on. Hi, next up is Lucky, also first year resident.
Hi, I'm Lucky. I just graduated from Kansas City Art Institute last year. No, in 2023. This is my first ever big artist residency that I've ever done. A lot of my work revolves around my childhood memories and personal narratives. I grew up in a small village called Pamyao, which means lots of flower, in Arakan, Burma. I grew up in a really specific environment where we had no water or electricity, and we grew all our vegetables and animals and all of that lifestyle. So a lot of my work is inspired by that. So this table that I made is from my thesis. It's just based on childhood memories of little specific things that I did as a kid. So one of them is like using a slingshot. We used to make slingshots and kill birds with clay balls when I was younger. So it's a sculpture inspired by that. And there's a kid playing soccer, and there's two kids like being in a pool together. But those are just little memories. But yeah, I think because I'm out of that environment now, I've developed a new sense of appreciation for the childhood that I had, and also a sense of criticism for the community. So that's what I've been exploring within my ceramics, and it's just working with clay is such a sense of liberation for me, especially the physicality of touching clay, and it just my brain so well, and it's so fun. So yeah, and then exploring more water vessels. That's a series that I've been working on here at Belger. Yeah.
Next is Warren, also first year resident.
Hi, I'm Warren. I'm also a graduate from the Kansas City Art Institute. I graduated during the COVID class. That was definitely a moment. But I'm here and I'm very grateful. was doing a lot of replication of like mid-century English slipware and kind of reformatting that into more of like a meme sort of style, making memes out of ceramics instead of just making them on my phone, which I normally do. But then my post back in Arkansas, I took a big shift and leaned into more of my indigenous heritage and really wanted to explore what that looks like and how I kind of navigate that, because my indigenous sort of upbringing really wasn't something that's possible, because my mother was adopted off of a Shoshone and Paiute reservation right before the Indian Child Welfare Act was put into place. So that was a very like circumstantial thing, but now since like I'm just kind of coming to terms with that and how I sort of navigate as like an indigenous person today about like that culture sort of being present and like passed down by like family and stuff like that. But the shift of making these like sort of very folky indigenous like figures and really focusing on like sort of Native American. I was talking too fast, sorry. I was on a roll. But now I shifted from like a sort of very traditional European style to a very traditional Native American style of surface technique and ceramics. So I'm making all of these little guys sort of inspired by like me and my mass absorption of like internet memes and knowledge of having like an average screen time of, I want to say, 10 hours a day. And this is sort of my reconciling of like, it was worth it. But here I'm just trying to make more and really get into more like niche references online that I feel very passionate about and sort of prove that like internet culture is something just as valid as like indigenous culture to me. And yeah.
Thank you. And Emily Potter, who is our Belger glass mechanics artist.
Hi guys, my name is Emily Potter. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. So if you guys don't really know a lot about Toledo, it does have a really rich history in industrial and kind of like machine-made glass. It's also where the kind of American art glass movement started in the 60s with the first glass blowing class held at the Toledo Museum of Art with the Dominic Lagina and a few other artists. And that has really influenced my work personally as far as color goes in glass. I really love transparent gem tones. So a lot of my work is very heavily influenced by nature. I really try to highlight the kind of like the nuances that organic forms have in their repetition, where none are exactly the same, even though they're repeated a lot. A lot of my work also, if you look really close, I like to kind of have what I like to call Easter eggs, kind of hidden meanings behind everything. A lot of my floral patterns have 5 petals to them. I do have 5 younger siblings, and my family really means a lot to me, so that's kind of like a nice little hidden personal narrative in my work. I also like using different textures and surface treatments in the glass once it's been annealed and cooled down, which includes hand engraving, like this image up here. You can kind of see the roughness of the different grits that are used to do that, as well as subtle sandblasting in some of my pieces to create really visual depth. When light passes through them, I usually like to display them around a window so it kind of changes as the sun moves, but they'll actually project those engravings and images onto the pedestal or the walls around them, and they kind of move and distort as the day changes. Also, since I've been here, been exploring more sculptural practices in my work, so that's been really exciting. Just having a really great team and community of people to work with. If you guys don't know this, glass blowing is not a solo activity. It's heavily influenced by working with other people. So just kind of bringing that community together too is something that really inspires me to keep making work.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now I've got a few questions for the group. So I'm gonna single you guys out a little bit. You can just pass the mic around. So both of you have, in your work, you both explore that like childhood memory referenced through not just the figure, but also objects, right? So I'm curious about like the difference between those two avenues because they are kind of two different vehicles, like working with the figure and then objects. So yeah, if you see them as different, if they are the same to you, if you like one over the other, just talk a little bit about those two different methods to kind of achieve the same narrative.
Yeah. So I guess my interest comes largely from cartoons and comics and things like that, and honestly, the processes of traditional cartoon animation, where you have sort of like a static watercolor background that was painted, it doesn't move. You have the animated cell, that's a more stylized version of maybe what you could see in the background. And I'm really interested in that kind of hierarchy and distinction of something that is animated and will move and something that won't. And thinking about everyday objects and people as sort of that way. You know, we're only sort of engaged with what we're looking at usually, or what we're about to do next. And I'm really into that with everyday objects. And I think, you know, there's like a desperation I have for maybe routine or structure or something that is could be offered by your surroundings. There's potential for that everywhere. But usually it's not the case, and things are hard or chaotic. And so I think a lot of it is just like personifying, you know, putting, you know, self-portraiture into like a trumpet or something. Just really blowing it out of proportion, kind of, you know, it's an absurd thing to do, mainly. Like I tell anyone else in my life, like, oh yeah, I spent 36 hours on a trumpet and it had this gold stuff on it. It costs this much. It doesn't make sense to anyone, but it's really essential for my own safety, I think. And then, you know, but obviously with cartoons in general, I'm just, you know, the figures and the characters are what are most exciting. But even with that figure, what I'm mainly drawn to are like actions and what the hands are doing or facial expressions and like smaller moments. So even when I do a figure, it's usually like I'm just like, what are the socks doing, or like the hand gestures, or like, you know, those smaller moments, and the rest of it I just want to blow through as quickly as I possibly can. So that's probably not the best thing, not advice I would give to someone, but I think that's my approach to those things.
I think for me, like figure and object work hand in hand together. Yeah, like when I'm stylizing my character, when I put the figure in a specific moment of doing an action, I have like little things like their clothing or their hairstyle, or like, you know, like an object like an apple or a soccer ball, or the drawing on their shirt that just adds so much personality and character to them. And it's just like, that's what I'm mainly like thinking of, is they work hand in hand together. And we're humans, and we like have so many little things that we associate to ourselves that makes us us, you know? We like, yeah, so that's what I'm thinking of when I sculpt those two things together. Yeah.
Let's see, my next question is for Joel and Emily. So perfect. Okay, so you both have like a very nuanced, layered surfaces on your work, and you know that is really what is helping drive those themes home and the things that you're referencing. So can you each talk a little bit about how you use other materials and techniques? I know for ceramics, like there's a lot of folks that think, you know, you just have to stick with ceramic materials, but there's a world of options if you're making sculpture, and things don't have to be food safe. And for glass, you know, there's a whole host of other techniques that you can do. So just talk a little bit about that, like, surface stuff.
Yeah, so when I was started off in ceramics being a potter, and everything had to be glazed, and if you used paint, it was like blasphemy.
Yeah.
And as I stepped further away from functional and started making sculpture, it was like the most liberating thing to just say, forget about all that. I can do whatever I need to do to find the desired visual outcome. And that has opened the possibilities up a lot. Now, for the types of surfaces I'm going for, they are not only just referential, like directly like oxidized copper or rusted iron, but I'm kind of like thinking about those eroded, patinized surfaces as a kind of reference that I think about when we like look at people who have lived certain lifestyles, and it's apparent. So like someone who hangs out in a smoky bar and drinks shots every day after work for like 30 years, you can kind of see it on their skin. They have a So I kind of think of whether it's on a person or a sculpture as sort of patina that exists, kind of tells a story, and gives a little reference to just lifestyle or conditions of their atmosphere. But to achieve certain finishes in my sculptures that have a depth, layered story, you have to create the circumstance to mimic that sort of thing. So whether it's 10 different layers of semi-opaque paint that kind of build a deep smoky atmosphere, or using a product that I'm using now that has metallic powder that you actually spray an acidic product on to make it oxidize, are different ways I do it. But anything from tarring and feathering a piece to spray painting to using old house paint, I'm open to. Yeah, so if you're not making functional ceramics, go crazy.
I'm curious, does that harm the canvas?
Oh, yeah, this is a good question. So all of these finishes, minus the piece on the right, that's the only one that actually has a fired on glaze. Everything else is cold finish. Post-firing, right? So I'll fire the sculptures to, come 6 so they're sturdy and won't break, and then I'll just kind of go crazy with them.
So yeah, I really love kind of like a visual, tactile feel to my work. One of my huge hobbies, aside loving being a glass blower, is I really love like fiber arts, textile arts, anything with yarn or fabric. I have a whole other kind of joy. So just when I think about that, I really think about how detailed and meticulous all of those pieces are, and I like to kind of transfer that to my glass work. So especially with the engraving and the sandblasted pieces, just creating those really kind of subtle layers to the piece, where the engraving is slightly harsher than the sandblasting, kind of helps to create depth. I also have another series of work where I do incorporate metal weaving into my glass work. It's a series of baskets. They're all vessels, and the bottom part of the vessel is a pretty intricate stringer pattern made in hot shop. It probably has 15 to 20 different colors, very, very thin, delicate lines, and then the top of the vessels are very thin copper wire, basket weaved together, kind of mimicking a traditional glass technique called incolmo, which is traditionally 2 colors put together to create a crisp horizontal line in a piece. So the copper is woven directly onto the glass to then build up the basket. So yeah, I really like just kind of working with mixed media in general. I've done other work where I painted with glass on paper and created different kind of burn marks to create patterns, and taken those pieces of paper and layered them together to again create that depth and visual feel. But I just really like trying out new materials. I've always loved working with my hands and anything. So if I can just sit there with my little engraver for like 10 hours, I'll be happy.
Yeah. Could you, for those of us that don't know a ton about glass stuff, like explain a little more technically the like sandblasting and engraving?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So engraving, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with like dremeling or Dremel tools. They make a bunch of different types of bits. For glass specifically, we use diamond bits because they're hard enough to like penetrate the material and still leave a nice clean line. They come in lots of different grits. I prefer a harsher finish when I use those bits, so this is 80. But you know, they'll go all the way to full polish. So just kind of building up on the layering between the different grits also has like a very subtle gradient to it. And then sandblasting is where you take compressed air and a medium and kind of essentially power wash it onto your piece.
That's a good way to describe it, yeah.
Depending on what medium or abrasive you're using, it has more of like a delicate cloud-like finish. And you can also use some pretty heavy abrasives if you want like more of a rougher finish. And I think, you know, I like using that to help create opacity in my work. Again, I really have a love for transparent colors, going back to just like the history of glass and how it's made and how colors are made. Anyone is interested in hearing about that, come find me after the discussion. I won't waste everyone's time if they're not interested in it. But yeah, I think just like really creating kind of layering where someone could like from afar see a piece and then come closer and be like, oh, I didn't notice this from before. Oh, and that daffodil vessel, if you see it in person, it's made with a special kind of glass that's called adventurine, which is basically like glass glitter. So if you walk up really close to it, the green just like sparkles so tremendously in the sunlight, and just kind of creating those little moments in every like side and detail of the piece where you can walk around it and really kind of find new things to appreciate.
I'm curious if you freehand or if you
Yeah.
design before you do the dremeling, and if you do, what do you use, a pencil, a Sharpie? I mean, how do you?
So it is all freehand work. I'm not very good with technology, so I know some people do use different kind of programs to create their designs first, but I just freehand everything. So it starts with, on just like a big sheet of vinyl, I kind of hand draw out all of my floral or botanical designs. I cut them out and place them where I want them to be, sandblast the piece. I remove those vinyl like stickers that I created essentially, and then I go back in and hand Dremel all of the places. Some of my work I do not sandblast, and for those I just draw on with Sharpie the basic shapes that I want to engrave. I do not ever draw on the detail because I do like that it's really kind of just like up to whatever happens. I don't try not to be too particular with it. I really do want to highlight kind of like the organicness and the differentness between repetitions of like natural forms. So I try not to do it too detailed where I can just kind of still like essentially make it up as I go and make sure everything's like a little different.
So for those of us who think of glass as being fragile, can you talk about sandblasting and dremeling? How many pieces do you break?
That is a great question. And contrary to popular belief, I've only ever broken one piece engraving it, but I did have an annealing issue, and I think it was that and not so much the engraving. While like the Dremel tool does like vibrate, as well as the sandblasting is like abrasive, glass is a very strong material if we're talking about like square inch by square inch. So it's, yes, I can make things with delicate connections if they're dropped on the floor, it will break, but it is a very strong material, so like the engraving and the sandblasting does not really do anything to it in terms of delicacy, but I have broken lots of things in hot shop, trying to get really beautiful, delicate connections. It's definitely a great learning experience. I think glass in general has really taught me to let go of things that are outside of my control and to just always try to get back up and kind of keep trying because stuff happens. It's winter, maybe there's a breeze going in, maybe someone asked me a question and I forgot to flash my piece and give it that little extra heat it needed before we took it off. But I think, you know, there's a lot to be said the fragility of the material and then try to make something that is strong and resilient as a final product. Someone else want to talk?
Alright, my last question is for Hannah, Warren, and Allyson, so choose the first right now.
I can do that.
Thank you, Warren. So all three of you use humor and playfulness as like an integral part of your work, and all very differently. So can you talk about like the role that plays and why it's so important for you specifically?
For me, I think it's just from like the source material of like memes and the internet that I do see online. For the most part, it is used. The memes like are supposed to be funny for the most part, is what I would say. But also, humor can just be like a pretty convenience the right word, but like the easiest tool someone could use to like convey like deeper thoughts and make them more digestible for people to absorb and think about. So
I think for me, it's kind of turned, like, I talk about like love and hate with the material. I feel like it makes me a little bit more sympathetic with what I'm making, even though it's something humorous, the characters. If it's not working out, seeing it as something that's gonna go through like a whole firing and a whole process, knowing it's gonna last forever because it's play. I don't want it to be this character that I'm not happy with at the end. So I feel like having it be something a little bit more humorous and playful than just a plain mug makes it easier to throw something away or get it to the finish line. It takes the pressure off of the pieces itself. I also think for me it's a lot harder to make the same thing over and over and over and over again. So for me, is at least if I'm viewing them as if they're in the same position, they're different characters. So if I've got three that are all doing the same thing, it's not so much, I'm a triplet, it's always a set of three for me. So it's more like they're one of me and my siblings rather than like 3 months they have to get to completion. So that's like part of it, I guess, is having these characters' personality and humor. I also, the character objects themselves, I don't really focus on them being functional as much as they reference a functional object. The humor makes it a little bit more interesting to create with a pose or something that is not going to be conducive to using it as an actual mug. At first, people really wanted to use them, and so I was kind of only having them sit or stand, and I was really, really bored of it. I feel like I was kind of forcing myself to do something for other people. I think the humor makes it fine. So I don't focus on that as much as the characters themselves.
So I think in grad school, even before grad school, I was digging into a lot more serious subjects. Like I was exploring anger and grief and self-reflection. They were all very serious, very heavy, and it's hard to live there year after year. And I think for me, I wanted to see what joy looked like in my work. I wanted to see where I could be funny. I mean, my work always had a little humor to them, but I never really explored that. It was really foreign in my own work, and I wanted to see what that would look like. I think I always had this dream. I also explored dreams and like wishes, and I worked really hard to get into grad school, and I want to teach someday, and this has been like my dream. And then I did it, and then I got a little taste of it when I got to go teach again, and I was like, this is joy? what is this is joy, and it was like, it wasn't sarcasm, it was more like, what is this feeling I'm feeling? It is actually like a real joy to do these things and like achieve something. And I was like, I don't know what that looks like in my work. And I was also in a very weird place where I wasn't a professor, but I wasn't a grad student. So I was still in like authority, I was still kind of in this really weird place. So I started like thinking like, well, what does joy look like in my work? What does humor look like in my work? And I kind of naturally gravitated towards like animals. Animals have never really featured in my work. That was never something I was very interested in. And when I noticed something like that, I dig into it. And so I was like, okay, let's try to see what animals look like in my work. And a lot of the times they had human faces or some kind of human aspect where it wasn't animal. So I was already starting to combine human and animal. And then I also have a throwing background, and I really like functional work and kind of thinking about things in that way. So I guess in 22 and like, or the fall of 23, last year I guess, I ended up making these kind of part human, part animal, part object things in these booty pots, these teapots with these little bums and legs on them. And that's where I was like, that's funny. That gives me a lot of joy. Oh man, this actually feels really good. So I've been slowly kind of exploring that while also kind of bringing the engineering and kind of the figuring things out in those little moments where it's like, oh, it works. You know, like, oh, this crazy idea works is like a lot of joy. So I'm still trying to understand what that all looks like, and I'm kind of pushing what I was doing kind of in my functional wear into more of my sculptural kind of things. I'm finding the figure again, like I'm really approaching things in a very playful and very humorous and joyful way. And I think that's what a lot of people need these days. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you all for talking so much. The last little bit, we're going to open it up to any questions that you all have. It can be technical, conceptual, anything.
Logan, what gold did you use to make that?
So that is just a gold luster, premium gold luster.
Premium.
Oh, yeah.
Prior to 018 or?
Yeah, something like that. Which is, my understanding is phased out of production, or it is in the process of that. So, which I probably wouldn't have made a trumpet.
Does it have lead or something in it?
I think it's some, I have no idea, but my assumption is that the production of it is not safe, and the company was bought out. It was made by Duncan, and then Mako bought Duncan, and I think Mako's like, we can make other things. And so, but there's plenty of other, luster is huge in Europe, and there's a lot of other luster manufacturers. It's just not that one. But that one is premium. About a bottle and a half of that.
Whoa.
I have a question for Allyson.
Go for it.
Did you say you were a triplet?
Yeah, I was a single mom that decided to have 3 of us at once. She's a superhero. I don't know what I did in a past life to deserve her in this one. Yeah, she's the best. I don't know how she did it. I'm here. My brother and sister are still down in Florida. My brother's a pilot. My sister's an engineer.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
Because I have zero talent for art stuff, and when you said you were a triplet, I thought, I wonder if it's genetic, like do your siblings?
No, that's all petri dish type stuff.
My dad was a mechanical engineer. He's pretty far from artistically inclined. Thank you for having a triplet here today. I didn't want to ask that question.
I like it. Yeah. I was in New Mexico before here. All restaurants closed before 3 p.m. I did not get that.
Get in trouble.
I don't know if I could think of like one thing, but more of like leaving, because I, as well as Logan, came here right out of grad school, and I'm already feeling like I accomplished a big part of my reason for coming here, and that was to have a space to decompress and kind of exit the mental space of the academic setting and kind of feel like I'm springboarding into my professional career. And this is really like the situation that I think was perfect for me to achieve that. So I'm not done yet, don't worry. But I'm already starting to feel like it was like mission accomplished. Like one of the big things I wanted to take away from here is well underway.
Related to that, because that's a good point. It's coming out of school, undergrad or grad school, either one is sort of this. It doesn't feel like it when you're in it, but it is a bubble of, that you can live inside of for those few years. And I think that, because I've seen it, so many people stop making art after school. So I think for most of us, it's just like, this is the first thing that's saying, we can do something. We can still make art outside of school, and work jobs and maintain things. And that's the thing about Kansas City as well, is that it's conducive sort of to living an art-oriented life, which is not always the case. Most of us couldn't afford to live in New York or Chicago or LA or anywhere else, but there's still a really vibrant art community in the city, and that's the cornerstone of that. It feels great to be here for that.
Question, Joe. I know you're an expert in art, and I know now you're doing sculptural form. Had you ever done any sculptural type work prior to this, or did this start here at Belger?
It started maybe like a year before I came here, and that's, I was just like a production potter, and that's how I kind of got into the clay world and the art world. But at a certain point, it wasn't really like satisfying me enough, and I was trying to exercise and illustrate some themes and get a little more something out of the work. But it just became apparent at a certain point that like the way my relation to pottery wasn't permitting me to achieve what I wanted to in an art form. So I kind of just jumped ship and started sculpting about 2.5 years ago now.
And have you thought about incorporating pottery techniques into the sculptural form?
Not there yet. I need to spend a little more time away from pottery. But no, thank you. That's a good question.
Back to the question of what is one thing I'd want to take away from here. I think for most of my life, I think a lot of people spend their lives kind of figuring out where they fit in. And I'm definitely starting to realize how many masks I've had to put on as a teacher, as an educator, as a worker, as a this or that. And I think, I don't know if it's possible, but it would be good to have a better understanding of like maybe I can figure out a thing that I don't necessarily work so much for, but it works for me. And trying to understand what that looks like. And so having, the space and time in this year to like experiment and try and, even go outside of things and see if, like, whatever I'm doing, I can get it to work for me. That would be amazing, I think. If anything, I think it'd be great, I guess, two-part would be like, the second part of that would be to find the figure in my work again. I used to do a lot more figures, and I've been kind of shying away from it, and I'm trying to get back in there and figure out what that looks like. So I think that would be great.
I think there's like two things for me. One of them is more simple than the other. So the simple one would be I want to fill the reduction count with some really big pieces. So I've set two in mind. I'm like, wow, make a piece as tall as me, that would be great. The other one, which I feel like is like 75% there, I feel like I've had a lot of other roles outside of art getting into the art world. In college, I was a student athlete, so I felt like that took up more time than art. I feel like I've been a teacher when I've been doing art since I graduated, and this is the first time that it hasn't been attached to something else in its entirety. And I'm still doing some of the athletic stuff. I was coaching, and I had this realization recently talking to the head coach. We're the same age. We actually competed against each other in college, and I think it's hilarious. And I can feel that I finally moved past some of the stuff that I felt like I was like, oh, well, I have to be an artist and this, or else I can't really be an artist because I have to do all these other stuff to do that. And I'm not in the headspace to be as obsessed with the sport that I used to, which is crazy to me, but I love it. And then I've got jobs that I can switch off of and just be an artist when I'm here. So I feel like, and also I've done, school and post-bac where I've kind of been treated as like, well, you're an artist, but you're a student, you don't know what you're doing yet. And here I feel like people have treated me like I kind of know what I'm doing. So I'm like, that's kind of nice, because most of the time I don't think I know what I'm doing, but everybody thinks I do, so,
Everyone in this room is sworn to secrecy.
Yeah. So that's been really nice, and I feel like by the time this is coming to an end, I feel like I got a lot more of my ducks in a row. So, yeah.
What sport do you teach?
Rowing.
Coach.
Rowing. So I've been rowing since middle school. I had a scholarship in college. So that's that for me. But I was 20 plus hours of working out a week. I was team captain all 4 years I was in college. I'm also second fastest in history at my college, so I used to be jacked. And so I know I can make big things because I used to lift up really big things and then put them back down. So, yeah. Yeah.
I'm also really fresh out of undergrad, so I'm still trying to figure stuff out, like trying to have a career as an artist, but still have a job to support myself, and also have a social life, and also like trying to sustain my other hobbies, So I'm still trying to figure everything out, but I think, during my residency here, I've been having a hard time in terms of guilt and making art. So I'm kind of trying to figure out why I'm making art in the first place and who I want to impact with my art, and that's kind of the main thing. Realistically and practically, I have a specific amount of work that I want to have done by the end of the residency that will make me feel good, but ultimately I'm always just trying to figure out why I'm making art and who is it impacting at the end of the day, and am I even doing anything, So, but it's all just exploration of self and what I'm doing for the community. So, yeah.
I think my first answer is low-key very a surface level just kind of thing for me, but making a really mean heavy piece about having someone of a different generation being what is that? But that's just me. But then also really what Logan said really resonated with me about when people do come out of undergrad or institution, the whole art making thing just does sort of stop, because real life does get in the way, and it takes a lot of energy to make commitments outside of studio and things like that. And I think really being able to have this opportunity here at Belger outside of a scholarly institution and being able to make art in a sense successfully has been something very accomplished feeling to me.
So I'm not a resident artist, so I will still be here when the year is over. But I did just move here actually over the summer. And part of the reason that me and my partner did decide to move here is because he's also a glass blower. He's sitting back there. But we really just wanted to be part of a space that really cared about art and influenced artists and be part of a community that really just wanted to grow and support people. And my first time I actually heard about Kansas City was this April. We took a glass blowing class at Monarch Glass Studio. And it was wonderful, it was incredible, the city was cool, we stopped by Belger, and just like walking into the gallery for the first time was like, oh my god, like we knew this was here. It was really just such an amazing space to see, as well as the Glass Annex where I now work. As soon as I walked in there, I was like, oh my god, I think this might be one of the cleanest studios I've ever seen in my life, as far as glass blowing goes. Yeah, it's true. And I'm a pretty type A person. I love having things clean and tidy and dust free and like as much as it can be. So as soon as I kind of walked into that environment, I was like, oh my god, this would be like such a great place to be an artist. And as fate would have it, we drive home from our class and there's 2 job openings up in Kansas City for glass blowers. So it's just really exciting to like be part of like such a growing community. And for you guys who maybe haven't been to the Glass Annex yet or know a lot about glass, we're a pretty new studio. We're just over 3 years old, which is not very old at all. And I feel like in like the 6 months I've been here, I've already started to see like more renters coming, more community members showing up, really trying to like bring people together. So I'm very, very excited that we moved here and we're building our practice here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.